Hello, everybody. Thank you for joining us today. My name is Jessica, and the two people you see on the screen are E and Atla. I am the Director of Marketing for Student Universe. Today, we're going to be going through a basic survival guide for studying in the United States. This information has been compiled from firsthand experience of both E and Atla, and then also we've gained a lot of experience through the 14 plus years that we have been in business. So was an international student from China. She studied in the United States and attended for grad school. Atla is from Norway, also was an international student studying in the US for grad school. E is a marketing associate here at Student Universe, and Atla is our CEO. So they are really excited to share their experience with you and just go through some general knowledge that we have gained throughout the years. In terms of questions, feel free to drop them in the questions tab and we will answer them at the end of the presentation. If there are a lot of questions coming in and we want to go through them halfway through the presentation, we might do that. But just be prepared for us to answer the questions at the end of the presentation. I'll be the one coordinating the questions with the presenters, so you'll hear me again later in the presentation. So Atla will start us off with a general introduction of Student Universe.
Absolutely. So a little bit about who we are and what we do. We are a technology company based here in the US. We're based just outside Boston, a lot of famous schools in this area. We deliver deals to students and youth. So if you're enrolled in a college or a university anywhere in the world, you can take advantage of our special rates on flights, hotels, tours, and much more. We do that by actually making sure that students are who they say they are. So we verify or we validate that you're actually enrolled in a college, and that's how we work with airlines and hotels to give you special deals on international travel. We already have customers from all over the world, and if you want to connect with us during this presentation or after the presentation, we recommend that you check out all our social media channels. We're quite big on everything from Weibo to Facebook.
Before you go, I think a lot of things need to be prepared. Here today, we're gonna go through like two parts. For example, materially, what you want to prepare, like what you want to do for your scholarship and for your visa application, what you want to do, and what time you want to book your airfare. And for the time when you are in US, probably you want to know how to survive culturally and professionally. We're gonna cover these two parts as well. Before you travel to the U.S., you need to prepare your scholarship. I think Atla has a lot of experience on that.
Yeah, the US has a slightly different culture when it comes to payment of college or university, even undergrad and graduate school. A lot of European, Asian, and other countries don't really have a scholarship tradition and built out system. Um, there are scholarships available at most colleges and universities in the U.S. You can apply for these scholarships rather, through the college. When you deal with the college, whether you've already been accepted or you're in the application process, you can get this information from the college and get a list of scholarships. So at the very basic level, a scholarship is something that is basically provided to help you pay for college and your education. This is paid by or provided by an institution, a fund, or someone that's willing to help a student to qualify for the scholarship to actually pay for their education. These scholarships are often applied for directly by the student before you start school, but a lot of scholarships can actually be applied for when you've been accepted and even when you get to the United States. There are sites that deal with scholarship applications, but like I said, a lot of them should be dealt directly with the university. One site that we recommend is scholarships.com. It's worth checking out, but there are a lot of other sites, and like I said again, um, check out the university website and ask the university contacts of a list of scholarships that you can apply for. There will be some scholarships that are specific to certain majors, and there will be some scholarships that international students cannot apply for. But it's definitely worth checking out, and some of the scholarships are rather big, and um, they could absolutely help you pay for college.
Mm. There is another thing that's really, really important that people care very much. That is visa application. Um, Personally, I got my visa. I applied my visa in China, Guangzhou. Um, I think I some of my experience might help you guys to um, to apply your visa successfully. For example, you really want to organize your application material before you went to the embassy, because try to think about in the interviewer's feed that they will went through a lot of people every day. If you can help them to make things easier, to submit your material very quick, respond very quick, they'll be very happy, have a very positive impression on you. And some other tips like be proactive, confident, and speaking clearly and smoothly, also very important. For example, why should be proactive? Um, for example, when I was in the interview in the embassy, they asked me that where are you heading to for school? I said blah 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 university, Michigan State University, but don't end up with this answer. You really want to talk about more. For example, you say, would you like to see my offer letter or administration my admission letter? Um, like that to um, act before to try to how to say understand what he wants to know in his question. So and confident is also very important. Confident and speaking clearly will give the interviewer the impression that you are ready for studying abroad. You have the ability to communicate with your future classmates, your professor. Yeah, that's very important. Yeah, and before you travel to US, I think a lot of people also want to ask the question about what time you want to book your flight. Uh, Personally, I think book early can save you more. And as one of the stuff in student universe, I saw a lot of data. The data also tells us that if you book early, you can save more. Um, Usually, I suggest that to book your flight 3 to 4 months in advance. You want to search um, 4 months before you go and check out how the price uh, fl- uh, how the price changed every day. And okay, if you think the price is acceptable, um, you really want to act as soon as possible. And at this time, you have a lot of options on itineraries, time, and seats. If you book late, probably you will get a higher price, and also you don't have a lot of options on seats and itineraries. Sometimes you even don't have options if even you don't have seats, right, to choose.
So the airline industry works is there are a certain number of seats on a plane, and for services like Student Universe that you can book online and get a student discount, we get a certain amount of those seats in that airplane, and the longer you wait, the higher the chances that those seats are sold out, the cheapest seats and the best seats. Um, when it comes to when you should book your flight, like E said, you should try to book as early as possible. There's always a question of whether you should book before you're getting your visa. Um, we can talk about pros and cons for that. Um, the most important thing is really you won't need a flight to get a visa. But once you have your visa, you're probably far enough out before your arrival that you can still get a very good deal on flights. There are a couple of tools. A lot of sites have this. We have it at Student Universe too. We have something called a fare alert, so you can set up an email that automatically sends you cheap flights for that city fare.
Yeah. Um, about misconceptions.
Yeah, both E and I have arrived in the U.S. as international students, and I think and there are hundreds of thousands of international students here in the U.S. And we tried to put together a quick list of misconceptions. So things that we thought were we knew about the U.S. and when we arrived and lived here for a while, they were quite different. So we'll talk through some of those.
Yeah, actually, before I came to US, I had some misconceptions. Like, I thought every city in the US, like New York, every city is very big, very noisy, and very like a lot of skyscrapers, concrete jungle, but actually not. Cities like Chicago, New York, Los Angeles, San Francisco, or and some others are very big, but uh, most of other cities in U.S. are kind of like countryside. um,
I think that's very important because a lot of you will apply to colleges and universities that are actually situated or based in very small towns.
yeah,
You will you should do some research with basic tools such as Google Maps or blogs to find out where the college that you're applying for is actually based. A lot of these colleges will be very big, so 30, 40,000 students, and they're usually based in small towns where basically the entire community is built around the college that's based in that town. And you'll have a big city not too far away, but you won't be based in a big city.
yeah. Like the second second one is U.S. guys are very aggressive. Like actually, a lot of my friends ask me that, hey, E, is American guys are very aggressive when they ask girls out? Actually, I don't think so. Based on my observation, it's not. I think they're the same as the guys around you, you know, and some of them, it really depends on individuals. Some of them are very shy, some of them are aggressive, but yeah, it's the same. They're same. Yeah, and some people think standard English pronunciation is very important. Actually, I don't think so because U.S. USA is a country, is an immigrant country. A lot of people from other countries. So I don't think the pronunciation is very important, but clearly and precisely express yourself is much more significant. You really want to, as long as you can express yourself in the right way and completely, I think that's totally fine.
Yeah. One misconception that we see a lot from international students, and this varies around the world, but especially Chinese, Indian students coming to the U.S. is they're used to dealing directly with a travel agent. Maybe it's something a travel agent that their family's been using, or the travel agent in the local office. Um, to get the best deals in the U.S. and to act faster on good deals, there's really no need for a typical travel agent. Most of hotels, tours, flights can be booked online very safely with any credit card, and you can actually or you can absolutely rest assured that you will get the ticket and that you will have no problem getting on the same flight as everyone else.
Yeah, I think that, and I read an article before that 95% of young people in US actually use online travel agency websites to book their flights and hotels. And I think it's very because for agents probably they have more cost on like stores,
Yeah.
the rent or and labor cost, but for online travel agents has low. lower cost on these things. So
Yeah.
generally, online travel agency can save more.
And the last misconception before we move on is really culturally there are some differences. I know in Norway, for example, high school is tougher than college when it comes to the amount of time that's demanded of you. I think both E and I can attest to the fact that university here, undergraduate or grad school, will be a lot more demanding, and you won't have a whole lot of free time compared to what you might be used to in your country.
Mm, yeah.
So then we go from before you go to what do you do when you actually or after you arrive.
Mm.
One thing that, and these are very practical recommendations and topics, but they're very, very important. Um, the one thing that you absolutely should do as soon as you're able to, after you've been accepted to your college and gone through the campus visits and everything that comes with that, is try to get a social security number. If you actually decide to stay, and we'll talk a little bit about visas later, but there are a number of visas that you might be able to obtain after you study. You will need a social security number. You will also need a social security number to get certain benefits and services in the U.S., such as a credit card or other services. And a credit card is not because you need credit. You should get a credit card because you want to build up a U.S. credit score. So in the U.S., there's a system that basically tracks how creditworthy you are, meaning how good of a payer you are. And to get a credit card, you need a social security number. When you have a credit card, you don't want to get into defaulting or not paying your credit card bill, but you want to spend money on your credit card and pay it off every month. That will build up a good payment history and improve your credit score. Um, Obviously, using your international cell phone in the US after you arrive can be very, very expensive.
Yeah.
So we recommend very early on, beyond the obvious, use of Skype and other online services, get a local cell phone plan, um, so you can use message systems and so on.
Yeah. And also, I think get a on-campus part-time job is also helpful on social security number application.
Yeah.
Yeah, most of the schools they have cafeteria or they have dormitory management position on school's website. You can go there before you came to US or when you are in the school, you can apply these jobs, and these jobs can help you first of all get the social security number, and second to build up some experience in US. You can learn a lot about how the whole system is working and uh, how US people status when they are working, how they deal with relations when they are working, a lot of things. So I think it'll be a very good experience for you guys, and also it's very good to to get some money from that, right? To earn some money,
Yeah.
and
You're not as a student, when you're on a student visa, you're not allowed to take a job off campus, and that's why on-campus jobs are very popular. The next bullet point is, as an international student, you are allowed to drive for approximately 1 year on your existing driver's license. But we recommend getting a driver's license immediately. When you are over 21, which is the legal drinking age in the states, you will be required more often than not to show some form of ID. And a driver's license is not only a good way to make sure that you're covered for insurance and everything when driving in the U.S., it's also a very practical way to have an ID instead of bringing your passport when you're going out and about.
yeah, that's good. And another thing we really recommend is to attend these student organizations clubs. Like Chinese students, they have Chinese student and scholars association, and Korean student association. I think different countries students sometimes get together um, to they have party together or they have activities together, and they some clubs on campus are also worthy to look up. Sometimes people do things together on sports, on um, like hiking or something. You always can find your friends, your future friends in this organization and clubs, and get tips from them and spend your time with them.
There are two more points here. One is every school or most schools will have an office dedicated to international students and scholars. And at this office, you'll find experts that can help you with visa applications. So again, when you graduate, whether it's from undergraduate or grad school, you will have different opportunities to obtain visas. They will be the ones helping you with this. So don't go with the idea of, I have to figure everything out myself. Schools will be more than happy to help with this, and that includes when you're traveling to and from your country. You need paperwork, and you need to have everything with you when you go in and out of the country. So make sure that you don't leave the U.S. to go back home and come back without the right paperwork and stamps in your paperwork. The last point is obviously close to our heart. We sell we serve millions of students each year at studentuniverse.com. And one thing that we can't stress enough is a lot of international students buy a one-way flight to go to school because they don't know their graduation date, so they don't really know when they're going to return yet. But once you know when the semester is over, try to book your return ticket as early as possible. You will get the best price, you will find a seat, and you will be able to secure the flight home.
Yes. And during your time in the U.S., uh, you really want to use different ways to integrate into the U.S. culture. Here I have some personal tips. For example, first how to improve your English. I think it's very it's very normal that same countries people get together to have party or hang out, but try to make more friends who can speak English with you, American friends or friends from other countries, so that you can practice your English as much as possible. And don't try to read the news or watch TV in your own language. Try to use English as much as possible. And if you want to learn more about American culture, to go to their games, sports games are very important. Like American football, soccer, baseball, basketball are very popular, and Americans are very crazy about these sports, and you will learn a lot when you watch these games with them. You will see, wow, how important this game's in these people's mind. And you will definitely understand some of their behaviors. And I really like to watch American talk shows like Jon Stewart's and Stu Colbert's and Jimmy Fallon's. They're very the content of their talk show will help you understand the politics and the culture, and especially the pop culture in this whole country, and what people are talking about in this country, what's popular right now. And the next point is taking advantage of American holidays. That's very, very important for you guys, because it's the time for you to travel around the country. When you're traveling, you will learn a lot. You will learn a lot of things that you cannot learn from the textbook. You'll see the costume in US among US people, and for example, a lot of students take advantage of their Thanksgiving days, their Christmas days, their spring break, or Easter. right?
Yeah.
These holidays to travel around the country. And a lot of our customers in student universe, they buy the student ticket, take advantage of the student discount um, to travel around the country to see the nature, to see the cities. That'll be very helpful for them to understand the whole country.
You have a unique opportunity as an
Mm.
international student because you're going to be on a campus where most, Americans will go home for these holidays, whether
Mm.
it's Thanksgiving or spring break, and take that opportunity to travel around the U.S. You can get relatively cheap flights and hotels. When you travel in the U.S., make sure that you search different different sites and look at different cities. We know a lot of the most obvious candidates: the New York, the San Francisco, Las Vegas, all these things. But um, there are many opportunities to see the country for less.
Yeah.
Uh, One thing that we see international students, and we have a lot of international students doing internships and working here at Student Universe too. Um, One thing that we see people making a mistake with all the time is they think that you start building a resume when you need it. Don't build a resume when you need it. Start building it long before you need it. And if you plan on using what's called an OPT, which is an optional practical training visa, an OPT is an absolutely fantastic opportunity for you to get 1 year of work experience after your studies. Um, you can apply for an OPT, and it's relatively easy to get compared to a lot of other visas, and it gives you 1 year to work in the U.S. And before that, you should build up a quality resume. Um, what does it mean to build up a quality resume? Well, a lot of the experience that you have on your resume goes beyond your academic training. So what you've done outside work is also very important. That comes down to volunteering. There are plenty of sites that will make it easy for you to volunteer, give back to the community. We also offer some of those volunteer programs if you want a little bit of help finding the right one for you. Another one that's more work experience related is the concept of internships. This is not common all over the world, but it's very common in the US. So an internship is basically a part-time or short-time job. Um, this is very often either for credits, for college credits, so not very well paid, but certainly good for experience, or with a an hourly rate that you go into a company, say over the summer or part time while you're studying. There are sites that will help you find an internship, um, but more importantly than anything, you should try to network when you meet businesses and when you meet people to see if there are internships available in companies based locally around your university. Try to get an internship in your field of study, but if you can't, it's much better to have an internship, a general internship, than not to have an internship. Um, so internships are really really good for to build up your resume.
Yeah. Um, I think when you if you are having if you're gonna have a internship during your study in school, rather than after graduation in OPT, you probably want to get a CPT because as international student you need the permission to authority to work in this country, that is CPT. So um, generally before you graduated, and you if you want to get an internship, you want to get the CPT first, or the offer first, the internship for offer first, and then apply the CPT from your school, and then go to the internship. And after you graduated, you have 1 year to apply jobs and have internships. That time you need OPT.
And again, the ISSO, so the International Student Scholars Office at your college, will help with this process as well. But start the process early and make sure you take advantage of it. When it comes to a full-time job, after your OPT, you will you will need what's called a sponsor, which is a company willing to give you a visa and apply for a visa on your behalf. We're not going to talk too much about this now because it's a little premature, but there are sites that you should create a profile with. I highly recommend creating a LinkedIn profile and updating it and treating it as your online resume. But there are other sites where you can find jobs and internships as well.
Yeah, cool. Um, a lot of my friends and actually a lot of customers, they asked us that where should I travel in the U.S. Here are two lists that we really recommend where you want to go. The first one is popular national parks. In U.S., the natural views are very, very good, and you really want to take advantage of this chance to go through all of the national parks and to see how this country look like. For example, uh, the um, Grand Canyon National Park is very big, and it's in California. A lot of people travel there and see the fantastic view. They took a lot of pictures, shared on their social, and they a lot of them are saying that, oh, I never saw that before. That'll be a very amazing experience for you in US. And the cities you must visit, like New York, Boston, Washington D.C., Chicago, they are all different, very unique. They have different culture, different personalities. Even you can feel in these cities. Um, yeah, that's what we want to recommend you guys to travel in the US. But don't be ending up with US because your US visa will be not only the door to US but to the world. For example, for me, as a Chinese, if I get the US visa, I can go to other countries without their country's visa. For example, if I go to Mexico now, I don't need any visa to applicate. And if I go to Canada or go to Europe for travel, that'll be very, very easy to get their country's visa if I get the US visa. Um, Personally, I remember that personally I got my Europe Schengen visa, European visa, just in 2 days. I applied on Friday and get my visa on the next Monday. That's very easy and it's very cheap to fly from US to Europe. So that's also a good opportunity to take advantage of your US visa. Yeah.
Awesome. Well, thank you guys. Before we kind of go into questions, we wanted to let you guys know, to thank you for sitting here and listening to us. We're actually giving everyone who is watching this presentation a $20 promo code good for your international flight at studentuniverse.com. If you use promo code College Week Live, all one word, it will give you a $20 discount on the purchase of a one-way or round-trip airline ticket. And this applies only for international flights arriving in the United States, and it's good for the entire year of 2014. So we really hope that you enjoy the presentation. We'll get into questions now. We actually have a lot of great questions coming in. So why don't we start with one of the more specific ones. We went through what you should do when you arrive in the United States, and one of the first things we covered was getting a social security number. So someone was actually asking, how do you go about getting that social security number?
To get a social security number, you need to go to a public office. You can arrange and ask where that closest public office is with your school. But it's a U.S. government office. You can't get the social security number from your university.
Mm-hmm.
Great. And then we had a couple questions too surrounding work experience. So one person specifically asked, do you think you can get into a good business school without relevant work experience?
I think it depends on your academic experience, and it depends on your experience outside or non-professional experience. So what I mean by that is, have you been engaged in other projects? Have you volunteered? Have have you built something? Do you have any interesting experience that the college will view as relevant to their admissions process? The short answer is absolutely you can get into schools without a lot of work experience, but you need to highlight why you're an interesting candidate.
Mm.
And then also kind of on the work experience side, once you're, we talked about once you're in the United States, it's important to build up a resume, not only through volunteer jobs, but also through part-time internships. So how would you recommend going about getting a part-time job?
Um, I think it's really, really important. First, it's very important to get a part-time job. Um, um, and these experience will help you to build up very relevant experience, which related it to your future position. Um,
There are two main buckets. One is an on-campus job. There are several jobs that you can get through your school, everything from the bookstore on campus to a cafeteria on campus. That is relatively easy to get because you don't need a visa. For a part-time job, you can get what we call an internship or academically related. Um, like we said, sites like internships.com, LinkedIn will sometimes have internships posted for your geographical area that you have here in the U.S. The other thing that's even more important than that is just constantly networking. Talk to your friends that had an internship, see if you can get an introduction to who they worked for. When you meet people professionally, have a business card. Most universities will recommend getting a business card printed with your name and contact information. So if you meet someone at a university event that works for a company that you would like to intern for, give them your information and be proactive about it. Network.
yeah, and sometimes international students office they provide a lot of positions for exclusively for international students.
Yep.
And also I think every school they have like career office. They will help you to refine your resume and provide a lot of opportunities. You can look up their website, or they have a lot of stuff there you can ask advice for.
Very cool. So, I mean, a lot of these participants are kind of in the beginning process of trying to decide, where they want to go and how they want to further their education in the United States. What are some of the steps that you guys may have taken to decide, on a school or how to further your education in the U.S.?
There are several steps. I'm sure since you're joining the College Week Live, this College Week Live session, you're familiar with their work and how they sometimes have sessions with specific schools. Even before that, there are a handful of things that you should consider when picking a school. Obviously, apart from the academic reputation of that school, which I would argue is the number one reason to pick an institution. You should look at majors offered. You should absolutely look at geography. There are a lot of good rankings that take all of this into consideration and look at percentage of students that got a job within 3 months and 6 months. That look at average salary increase before and after the education. Everything from Newsweek to Time Magazine have ratings like this. You can easily find that through Google or any search engine that you use. Um, you should also consider the cultural fit of where you want to be. When you look at schools on the West Coast versus East Coast, apart from the weather, being in California, in Southern California, is a very different experience than being in Boston or New York when it comes to not only culturally. The West Coast is more laid back, slightly more liberal. The East Coast is obviously geographically colder and has seasons and also a little more conservative, if you will, and to some degree more established with old schools like Harvard and Yale and so on. Yeah, the community that you want to be part of, you need to be very honest with yourself. A lot of schools have a large community of international students, um, Chinese community, an Indian community, Korean, Northern European. And if you want that, and you're honest with yourself that that's important to you, you should also look at lists of which schools have the highest degree of international students.
Yeah, in terms of choosing schools, I think it's good to consider your budget as well. Because, for example, in big cities, um, you probably uh, need more
Yeah.
money, right? To because the life expense and the tuition might be higher. But for schools in countryside, that'll be probably a lower cost. And but there are also some advantages in big cities because usually in big cities you can find your internship, your full time, um, in easier way because there's usually more opportunities there, right? But in some small towns, probably there are not a lot of opportunities to apply. So use your best judgment on that.
Another thing that's very practical and might sound very small, but actually has an impact on your life is consider travel time. Um, the U.S. is a very big country, and just to put things in perspective, flying from Boston to San Francisco takes almost 6 hours, and there's a 3-hour time zone difference. Um, I'm from Norway. Communicating with my family and traveling to and from Norway is a very different experience whether I live in California or live in Massachusetts. So take that into consideration. It might certainly not be a top priority item, but it's something that actually makes your life very different. If it's very important to you to communicate actively with your family, those experiences can be very different.
Actually, for me personally, I think that's really remind me my experience because I travel a lot. I travel to different cities. Before I came to Boston, I traveled to like New York, Los Angeles, San Francisco, a lot of cities. And finally, I settled down in Boston because I really love the culture here, and um, I can make a lot of friends. A lot of we have a lot of in common here. So you really want to travel to see what's the characteristics for different cities, what city you want to go to when you're choosing your no matter schools or internship or your full-time job. Yeah, travel is very, very important.
So, I mean, one of your earlier mentions about how, if you choose to study in a school in a larger city, living expenses
Mhm.
can rise.
Mhm.
One of the questions we got was, so many people believe it's expensive studying in the United States. So, how do you kind of combat that or find alternative ways to save money while you're here?
Oh, wow, that's a that's a good question. Um, I think because in U.S. there are a lot of ways to save your money. First of all, take advantage of your student status when you travel. When you can find your student discount on Student Universe, and we also have student deals, right? You can go to studentuniverse.com/student deals. Um, and you can get cash back from when you are shopping online. And the second, when it comes to your life expense or tuition, you want to go to internship to apply internship or part-time job. These these jobs can earn you some money and to balance to meet the end, and also you can apply the scholarship as we mentioned before.
Yeah, I was gonna say I think scholarships are actually pretty not unknown, but they're a big opportunity for reducing the overall cost of college.
Cool. So I think we'll maybe wrap up with a question for each of you to answer. What do you think is the most important thing to know or keep in mind when studying abroad in the United States?
Uh, uh, for me, I think first of all, um, hardworking.
Wow.
That's very important because there's a lot of new things you need to adapt to and you need to learn to. And the language, probably for international student, the language probably the biggest problem, not problem, biggest um, challenge you will meet because what you learn from textbook when you're in your country might be very different from what you will listen to in US, and they use different um, phrases and very different, I think, from what I learned in China. So first of all, I really want, I think, to try your best to improve your language is very important. Yeah.
Yeah, I think my number one recommendation would be to explore.
Mm.
And by that I mean don't just stay in the city that where your college is. Don't just hang out with um, like-minded international students and speak your own language, but get out there, see new cities, see new places, and meet new
Mm.
people.
Yes.
Because if you're going to stay abroad for whether it's 4 years or 2 years or even just 1 year, make the most of it and get a completely integrated experience. So you improve your language skills, you really understand the culture,
Mm.
and I think you build up a profile that if you want to stay and work for a year or maybe even more, um, you're going to be in a much better position.
Yes.
Awesome. Well, thank you guys for that information. Ian Atla, thank you very much for your experience and your knowledge. Once again, for those of you who have watched this presentation, you can use promo code College Week Live at studentuniverse.com to get an extra $20 off your international flight to the United States. And the promotion code is valid for the entire year of 2014. And if you have any additional questions, feel free to reach out to us on Twitter, Facebook. We're also on Weibo and Renren for any Chinese audiences that would prefer to speak to E in Mandarin. And we really appreciate your time. Visit us at studentuniverse.com. Thank you.